Okay, let's kick this off. Thanks everyone for joining. I'm Jess Armstrong, SVP of Marketing at Upwave, a brand analytics company, and welcome to this installment of our Masters of Brand Measurement, a quarterly series where we bring together leaders across advertising, media, and the measurement landscape. This event is meant to spark ideas, drive conversation, and provide new perspectives, and I know our all-female panel of industry changemakers will do just that today. I'm personally excited to hear them talk about how they've overcome challenges, navigated their career, and their take on the future of women and media in ad tech. Here to help us moderate is Allison Vukovic of Prohaska Consulting. Allison, I'm going to hand you the mic to take it away.
Thank you so much, Jess, and hi, everyone, and hi, ladies. We are thrilled to be here talking about issues that are always sort of top of mind for women in the workplace. So to start, I would like to introduce our panelists, and I will say before we get started, there will be a Q&A afterwards. So pop your questions in the chat. So the last 7 to 10 minutes, we'll cover those. So first, I would like to introduce Jessica Hogue from Hearst.
Of course, I wasn't ready with the mute button. Hi, everyone. Jessica Hogue from Hearst. I've had the pleasure of being in and around the media industry for over 20 years from my time at Nielsen, Innovid, and have been at Hearst as our Chief Data Officer for consumer media just for the last 6 months.
Wonderful. And next we have Sarah Martinez from IAS.
Yes, hello everyone. Sarah Martinez here from Integral Ad Science. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer. Couldn't be happier to be at IAS. You're going to hear about why I'm so proud to be at this company, which is a
business. I mean,
global leading measurement and optimization company.
A couple things about channel mix.
Sorry, I don't know
been
if
around
there's
for 16 years. We're here
a
in
huge
Kansas City.
a background noise. I don't know if anyone else is hearing it, but all good. Thrilled to be here with all of you, amazing women, and we're going to have an awesome next hour.
Sounds like a man just jumped into our webinar. Like, geez, come on. Just kidding. I was kidding.
Kansas City, to be specific. Yeah.
And next we have Jeremy Gorman from Netflix.
Hi, everyone. Jeremy Gorman from Netflix. This is my 1-year anniversary at Netflix, where I am the president of worldwide advertising, prior to which I was the chief business officer at Snap and ran global advertising sales at Amazon, along with a number of other tech things. So we will talk about that migration through the tech career in a little bit, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Jeremy. And finally, last but not least at all, Samantha Ski from She Media.
Hey, I'm CEO of She Media, Samantha Ski, and we are owned by Penske Media Corp, acquired about 4 years ago. I've been here for 10 years, and prior to that, at a mix of clean tech, media networks, back to gaming sites in the 90s.
So we obviously have some amazing experience and likely wonderful stories from all of you. But to start off, let's talk about kind of where we are in the seasons. Labor Day's behind us. People are going back to work. Companies are mandating folks to go back to work. So I'd love to hear what you ladies have to think about that intersection of balancing career growth, career progression, day-to-day work with managing families. And I invite whoever'd like to start to kick it off.
I'll jump in. So yeah, back to school is real. It is September timing. I do have 2 kids, and it's been pretty busy, but really what I've been focused on at the office right now is return to office. IAS has a hybrid work model, so we're returning back 3 days per week. We are currently through the transition plan right now. And really being thoughtful on how we drive that engagement. I'm a big believer that the engagement of the team is a proxy for driving results. And so as a leader, I want the team's experience to be about collaboration, knowledge share, bringing our values as a company to life. And so just this week, we've been talking as a leadership team about in-office ideas and, how to just really drive that engagement, whether it's show and tell during lunch and people can share their passions or their favorite places to travel, or just today, the leadership team in EMEA did a community service day. So really just making sure that the return to office is truly about genuine connection. And I think that balance really comes from the fact that, us as leaders need to accept that, we need to lead with empathy, but we also need to guide the teams in understanding the benefits of being in person, right? Like being an engaged employee taking on projects outside of your scope, collaborating cross-functionally. It's honestly, you know, some critical ways that I've become successful in my career. And, you know, just want to make sure that the teams truly understand the benefits of being back into the office. And, you know, I think that balance too of how do you manage the return to office, how do you manage the different seasonality, is kind of just accepting the fact that, you know, change is constant. It's constant at home. It's constant at the workplace. It's constant in our industry. And you really just want to be around leaders who are truly empathetic and leaders who lead by example. And I get asked all the time, how do you do it? And I'm a very open leader, very transparent around family and work. And I think that helps me, right? We're all in this together and discussing our tips and tricks. So I'm very excited for return to office. And I hope my team is too, but you know, love to hear from the rest of the group also on how we're navigating it, whether you have families or not, of just going through career progression and balancing life.
Yeah, I can totally build and relate. It was interesting because I joined Hearst 6 months ago when, you know, we were very sort of in the mix of return to work conversations, and it being a new person joining a very large organization, you sort of want to be, you know, I'm trying to build relationships. So being in person, having that sort of chemistry and that dialogue is really critical to my success of understanding the organization, getting to sort of start to develop my team and my role here. And so for me, it while complicated as a working mother, I agree with your point, Sarah. Like, there's always something that you're juggling. I mean, the other day I had, you know, major roof damage and had to work from home just to manage that. I think for me, the two other tools that I think get shined a light on right now, which are so critical to making this work, are communication. I mean, you described, you know, you kind of have to be open and transparent and have empathy. And I think that comes also from really good communication around normalizing what does the juggle look like. And I think one thing that I've aspired to do is to normalize that by just sharing my own experience. And I usually try to back that up with not how I do the things that I've done, how I've navigated that throughout my career and, you know, young, and now I have teenage kids, but also what I have been able to do despite all of that, or because of it in some cases. And I think, you know, we have an opportunity to just normalize and socialize those stories to make it a little bit more comfortable for others that maybe don't feel that they have the same support system around them, whether it's in the workplace or at home. And I think it's really, you know, innovative right now, the different sort of flexible models, the inspiration for coming back and bringing people together. So I'm hopeful too that with that kind of communication, empathy, that we're going to get some really great new kind of work experiences out of that. So it feels like a, you know, not a complicated time, but certainly one with a lot of promise.
I mean, I agree. I'm back in the office, and I think it's crucial for the collaboration. I'd love to hear what Jeremy or Samantha.
I can jump on it, and I think that empathy is such a fundamental sort of skill, even that, or exhibiting and exercising empathy is a skill I think that we've really had to hone during COVID, as we've contemplated. I mean, people are experiencing wildly different things. I would balance that with some degree of boundary setting also, which might sound like the opposite, but I think it's not meant to be at all. I think that if we allow ourselves and our people to be really clear about what they need, and I task my colleagues here with, like, be really clear, because we can be cool and flex and empathetic, but to a point where I do worry that it won't. Infinite flexibility might not be the best for everybody's work style or productivity. So I like to suggest that we all be extremely transparent and clear about what we need, but really task ourselves with understanding what we need. I'm the worst at this, by the way, like at understanding it's not going to happen today. I'm like, stop scheduling it and changing it. But I think that's one where we have to have agency ourselves for, like, what does success look like within this wildly changing landscape for me? And then communicating it. And again, normalizing the abnormal nature of work right now, or new work.
I think I'll just jump in here. I think you're actually seeing one of these real things playing out in real time, whether you know it or not. I am not a parent. And oftentimes I feel that therefore I cannot participate in this conversation because people would be like, you don't understand, right? And I don't take anybody to school in the morning. I don't make lunches. Well, I do for myself, but I don't have kids. And so I kind of feel like, okay, maybe this is for other people to decide. But as a leader, I think the most important thing is understand to the best of your ability, be as empathetic as you can possibly be. And I am a leader and I do have to participate in the conversation, even if I'm uncomfortable, because I feel like I'm not the person to talk on this topic. Where I can talk about it is, I think that when I was coming up through my career, I realized how much I learned just by being around other people. And I don't mean that in a formal mentorship kind of way, but in the lunchroom, in the hallway, in open spaces, open offices. And I would overhear people, men, women, whoever, I would overhear other people that were excellent and choose to spend time with those people who are excellent. And if you don't know who they are in the workspaces because you're not there, that's really important. So I think being around other people, I also think as senior women, it's our responsibility to be there so that people can hear us being either excellent or idiotic, and learn from those kinds of things as well. One of the things that has surprised me, I think generally the most across a lot of offices that I've visited, is that people didn't make adjustments to the physical space for the new world. The conference rooms are still huge. They still default show as booked, even if the meeting is going to be virtual. People don't show up for them because they take them from their desk. The open desk means that every single person is sitting next to each other on a Zoom. So what I'd love to see institutionally is the recognition that we are going to be probably in some version of flexibility or a hybrid world over a period of time, and that the physical spaces can allow for that collaboration, but also smaller rooms where you can take one Zoom call with one person and those kinds of things too. And I'm surprised I haven't seen more of that actually.
That makes sense. I mean, adjusting, especially with all these big offices that folks aren't necessarily filling at this point, there have to be some adjustments. But it's interesting you mentioned how you came up as a leader and sort of the different conversations that you have and participating in them. And as women, I'd be interested to hear your take on navigating that, not just the rise to leadership, but how you help women in your organizations, or what sort of insights you have for folks who haven't quite reached the top of the C-suite, some advice or guidance or lessons that you've learned along the way. Jess, would you like to go first?
Sure. I thought you were talking to Jess Armstrong for a second. So it's interesting because as a chief data officer, I would say I've had a pretty non-traditional path to this role. I mean, oftentimes, people assume someone who's come from data science, product engineering in a highly technical role. And one of the choices I made in navigating my career, particularly in sort of one that was heavily technically oriented, was to just do a lot of jobs, see a lot of parts of the problem of the types of things that we're solving in media, whether it's from the advertising, marketing, commerce perspective. And what that allowed, I mean, I think it just came organically from a place of being very curious about how things worked, how businesses developed, how they transitioned and evolved over time. But the sort of seed of curiosity allowed me to move into a lot of different functional roles, purely on the sort of initiative to, I may not know that, I may not have domain expertise in that function today, but I can learn it. And I don't know where the sort of innate confidence around learning came, but I started to own it over time because I was always uncomfortable. I was always in a cycle of, I didn't grow up in this domain expertise, but I'm sort of moving across as somewhat of a generalist. And anyway, over time, it became something that I just sort of enjoyed and got more comfortable with over time. And so I guess what I would say is, one, I think specifically for me at the intersection of media and tech, that cross-functional expertise was very helpful in helping me move and have not just mobility in different companies, in different parts of the ecosystem, but also just in different roles. And I've had product roles, revenue roles, data-driven roles. And so I would encourage anyone in specifically in our industry to think about what that mobility looks like, whether it's, again, different company, different size, just seeing a different part of the industry. I think, the spirit of that I would say and maybe encourage others to think about is, just own what you love, right? For me, I love being able to learn new things, being curious, and the process of figuring things out. And that ultimately led me to starting businesses, building products from the ground up. But I had to really get in tune with, do I love selling and scaling and things like that? Or do I love the early stage of something? And I think once you have that intuition about what excites you, what gives you energy, you have more courage and you have more capacity to just do more of that. And I think it's, it's interesting. I guess the other observation is I find that women do have a tendency, and maybe this is just a personal opinion, to be really good at lots of different disciplines and to sort of do the sort of shift in different moment. And I think that particularly at the intersection of media and tech, that requires you to wear a lot of different hats. That's not a bad thing. But I think it hasn't always had a career track or a vocabulary to describe what that skill set is. And I just encourage people, if they sort of identify with that type of range of skills, to lean into it and own it, and not sort of shy away from like, well, I don't fit in this one box, so therefore, maybe I can't rise.
Very good point. And I would be very curious to hear what Sam has to say in that regard, since you've been someone who've been, you've been at She for a while, and you've worked your way up, whereas Jess, Innovid and Nielsen, and now is at Hearst, so it's sort of had those pivots. I'm sure you have a different perspective, given that your tenure at She has been.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah, and we've gone through
yeah.
also we've gone through the phase of, we acquired 2 companies during my earliest time with She Knows, and then we were acquired. So those were really different, also different sides of an experience that has been extremely educational. And I love everything that was just said by just about modality shifting and developing a vocabulary for that. I do feel like I'm often stuck between how do you have range and avoid being like a master of nothing. But I think that's to lean into that expertise of modality shifting and then allow yourself to go deep on certain things. That's something I've always been drawn to. Like if I don't know how to do metrics on social and I'm like, God, I need to get a Gen Zer up in here because I can't figure this shit out. Like then try really hard, like go on YouTube and like learn it the way my kids learn to play guitar, like go watch a video. And I think I often have a kind of a baggage about this. Like if I don't know how to do the thing, then I feel kind of incapacitated or weak maybe. But the other thing I'd say there, so in addition to like allowing yourself to get to know something deeply while also enabling this modality shifting and cross-functional expertise, I would also say that you have to kind of figure out what these key components to being useful in your workforce are. So there are certain language around KPIs or around, all the goofy business terms we use, but really like what drives profit. And whether I'm talking to an editor on my team or a coordinator or a person who is in like events or, a seller, I always recommend that they understand the profit model, because otherwise it's just really hard to understand your place in the organization and why decisions are made, especially in media when they're made so quickly. I had so many friends who were in the like beautiful corner office at Condé Nast or somewhere, and were suddenly, going from like wonderful photo shoot with like an embarrassment of riches and giraffes and models. And then they were like cleaning out their desk and they just didn't get it. I mean, because no one let them understand the business that they were in. And like they kept that on a different floor in the building. And I felt like that was not only infantilizing to a lot of women editors in chief, but also, and, maybe perhaps a like unwitting strategy of the patriarchy, but also in addition to that, it just doesn't give you a lot of agency to make choices in your career that will allow you to continue to ascend if that's your goal. If your goal is to continue to ascend, you've got to understand the core business, whether you're at a big company or a small one. So that's my advice.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
No, it's okay. I would agree.
Me.
I think some of the commonalities I find with female leaders in general, but I would say, many successful leaders is what we're talking about right now, which is just like an innate sense of curiosity, right? And just having that curiosity stay with you throughout your career. When I think about looking back and navigating on my career, it's like I was very attracted to the growth mindset. I didn't know that then. I know it now. And when I look back at the companies that I worked for at the time in the industry I was in, it was about that growth mindset, which was really about that curiosity. And I think that led me to navigate my career. And it's not linear. It was people management, not people management, people management, not people management, moving from different sides of the business. And to everyone's point, like that curiosity led me to a nonlinear path, which I think gave me the skill sets I needed to be successful today, to have different perspectives and also, not be too much of a generalist and know how to go deep in certain areas. So I couldn't agree more. And, that navigation again for women out there is have that sense of curiosity. Don't be scared to raise your hand. It's okay if you don't know something. There's so many smart people around you, and use them to really learn and dig in. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I agree with everything you all said. I actually love everything you all said. The range and the depth is really, and the balance between sort of broad and deep is really, really important. I actually typically will give advice to younger people asking, how do I navigate a career? Like Sarah just said, like it's not linear, it's a lattice. The company from which I moved, I had 2,500 people in my organization. And when I took this job, I had one. And I think a lot of people can kind of get in their own way of like, oh gosh, is that a reversion? Is that wherever? And it's like, not if you have the growth mindset, like Sarah was saying, it's like, okay, then we'll build it like that. We're going to be in charge of building it then. And now I think I have 30 or something. And by the way, it is delightful to have fewer direct reports than 2,500. So that's nice. But I also think it is that curiosity. And a lot of people get really stuck, everybody, not just women, but I need to be the deepest expert on this one thing. The problem with that, and Sam touched on it, is that one thing changes. And I look back at my career. I graduated from college in 1999, despite my youthful glow. I know, shocking too, but I graduated in 99. And I was a sociology major. And I remember all of the comments about that were like, oh, what are you going to do? Flip burgers, like all this kind of stuff, because people wanted me to have some like very deep expertise in whatever it is, accounting, et cetera. Had I done that, however, this is when the internet business was starting. And because I was a generalist, because I understood people, which at the end of the day is how all businesses work, I was able to jump into an industry where I didn't have a specific expertise, but it was like, this tech thing is growing and I'm in, let's go. And so I always say, like, if you have one expertise, that's great, but you should assume that your expertise is going to be disrupted and therefore continue to learn, because otherwise, to exactly Sam's point, all of a sudden you find yourself cleaning out your office because you did one thing, and you just have to maintain that curiosity, ask a million questions, go to meetings you're not invited to, or well, you should ask first, and go to meetings that you're not invited to and learn about the parts of the business that you may not have in your wheelhouse at the moment.
I love all this. And it's, this theme of curiosity and being, multidisciplinary and really learning for yourself and making yourself valuable. But, we do all exist within a structure of corporations, right? And there are people in those organizations who either help or hurt as one grows. So as women leaders who've achieved wonderful success, how do you look at sort of like a mentor relationship, or how do you think about women who are coming up, supporting them? What's some advice you can give to the folks who are listening in terms of fostering an environment within work for women to have the space to exercise that curiosity and follow in the lead that you all have just laid out? I
can jump in, or no, somebody else go.
I'll reverse the order. I'll start on this one.
I
think I have a little bit of a contrarian point of view here. I think mentorship is extremely important. I think we institutionally have gotten to a place where it's very assigned and very rote process. And I don't believe that is how life works. I think that if you're assigned a best friend, you're probably not going to love that person as much as you love the best friend that you chose, that you found something that you have in common, and you build on that over time. And I think that's really hard, to just say, okay, it's your first day and here's, Sally, and she's going to be in charge of you. Sally might not want to be in charge of you. You might not have anything in common with Sally. So I have found that rather than formal mentorship programs, while I still think they're really valuable, especially early in careers, is truly just the organic nature of finding people who you respect, love, and trust. And I think you never stop learning. And I will embarrass Sam here for a second, but we met earlier this year. We'd known each other sort of peripherally through the industry, and we met in a room, well, a hotel lobby, but we met in a room.
How much are you going to tell? Like, how far are we going?
No. Don't worry. I'm not going to talk
I'm
about
just like slightly tense. Okay.
Yeah, don't worry. The tequila mentions will be limited, but I didn't know anybody in where we were, and I walked down the elevator and was like, okay, well, at least everybody's here for the same thing, so maybe they'll be nice to me, I hope. And I went down and I sat on the couch, and there were 4 people that were incredibly kind to me. They were like, hey, yeah, come have a seat, like do whatever. What do you do? Why are you here? It was my first time ever at this big event. And you know, Sam and I have probably talked, or at least via text, almost probably every day.
Well, mentorships there too, dude. I've already asked for advice on 3 different things. I've asked you for a lot of advice through this. Yeah.
And one of them, by the way, is the CEO of Upwave, which is why we are both here. And I think that like that organic nature, and you don't have to say like, I'm so senior, I don't need help anymore. It's a different kind of help that we give each other. I'm not like, you know, can you review my resume or whatever? But that organic nature of becoming close to somebody, respecting somebody, talking them into skipping their train home to take care of their kids.
I'm such a that was wild child. That was,
it was awesome. And I think that happens at every level, which is like, you find your people, you can ask your people anything, you do favors for your people, you work with them. And to me, that's more mentorship than that traditional like assignment. That being said, at the beginning of my career, I was certainly grateful for the assignment that somebody was in charge of me to teach me and those kinds of things, because otherwise you're a little bit nervous, shy, young, whatever it may be, and you don't want to do the asking. But a combination of those 2 things is really important.
I think that was, I'll jump on that one because we love this story, because it was one of those moments. I think there was like a kind of a, I don't know, magical combination of guards let down, where I don't even think I knew what all y'all did or like anyone's last name until like the next day. And it was kind of perfect because we were like, oh, we're just, you know, here hanging. We're in a fun room that we got invited to because we'd done some interesting things. And then you get to be kind of human, and and maybe you don't even make your train home that night. But that is a really cool kind of mentorship that I'm only rediscovering or discovering now, because you're asked to mentor so often, and I also totally validate or agree with Jeremy, the point about assigned mentorship. While useful in certain stages, I have at least a dozen women just whom I work with now probably, and many over the years, who have like decided I'm their mentor, and I love it. They're just like, and we're going to meet, and here's what we're doing. And I mean, they feel it out clearly. But it's like people who you see opportunity to learn from, and they all without fail are teaching me something, because I definitely need to keep my skills sharp in areas that I don't have access to day to day or direct reports in. So I love that proactive, like I'm sort of choosing a mentor and I will figure out how to make myself relevant to that person, make that person show up. It's so impressive, the women I've seen do this, because they're kind of selling me. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know how you're on my calendar again. And like, I'm with like prepared stuff that they're asking. And so that's like the meek mentorship, where it's like, yeah, here I am, guide me. It does not work for me. Like time is short. I want to feel like I've done something good for you. Like I want that closer feeling. Like it's the worst when you get the, like, can you have a coffee with me? I just want to, sorry, dude, I'm being a dick, but so like the sort of, you know, I want to just like, we just talk about career advice? And I'm like, you know, I'll tape it and send it to you. But I would rather this like really engage, like where they're, you know, the person knows what they want to ask, and they're like asking something of me so I can do something and feel like I've had an impact. Because a lot of the reason I think you lean into mentorship as an exec is because you want to have impact. And I don't know how impactful it is for me just like have a shit ton of coffee all day. So I'm with you on the like organic.
I couldn't agree more. And what both of you are saying too is, I think there's like the purposeful, maybe earlier in your career, you're learning what mentorship is. And I think in those moments, the things that all of our companies probably do with regards to mentees and mentors is needed, right? We're also teaching them at a young age or younger in their career to have a goal and to come with purpose to a meeting and to prepare for a meeting. So I couldn't agree more. I mean, I definitely have the organic mentorship where, those texts come in, let's grab a drink. And before I know it, 2 drinks later, we're talking about the person's career the whole time. And it is my favorite thing to do. And then the more, business approach, more formal approach. And I always say, just whenever you're working with someone that knows that they're your mentor, come prepared, have a goal, talk about accountability. Like that is what we all get out of being mentors. And then I think, Jeremy, to your point, like on the organic front, I always say, the people throughout your career, and for advice for people, like staying curious, but don't forget how important relationships are. I mean, I have this incredible board of advisors, I call them. They don't even know that they are, but they're all on my phone, on my notes. And I make a conscious effort at least once a year to make sure that I'm seeing them in person. Some I talk to at least a few times a month, and they challenge me and I challenge them. But, they're just that group of people that have different mindsets, diverse backgrounds. And that's mentorship, where it's very organic and it's cumulative. Like as you're going through your career, your mentors are cumulative. You're going to add them up. And one day you're going to look back, they're going to be your network. They might be at your wedding. It's just such an incredible experience, but have purpose in some situations and let it be organic in others. I couldn't agree more with what you're both saying.
Sounds like the theme of curiosity is still running strong, because it's come, be curious and have a purpose. And Jess, unless you have something else to add to this particular
no, I was just gonna maybe just add very briefly. I mean, for me, I always struggle with the boundaries of mentorship, coaches, bosses, friends, whatever. I mean, I worked for 2 women who really always stick out for me, that were both my bosses at different times. And I couldn't even point to like when we crossed the chasm into friends and mentors. But the characteristic that I think of in those 2 relationships are they're people I can call always. Like they're there to cheer on a success. They know sort of directionally where I'm headed. They're kind of like a headlamp. Like they're not saying go here or you should do this or here's what I would do if I were you. It's sort of just like they're a little bit of a light that kind of gets me and knows where I'm going, but is able to ask the right question to say like, okay, well, how does this feel to you? And they've also been there like when it's been messy. And it's not been, maybe a role that like thought it was going to be great and then wasn't. And I think that that sort of fluidity to be there through all things in just a sort of way that is intuitive and sort of focused on, definitely with some purpose, but kind of adaptable. For me, just, again, I never thought to call them mentors, but I think that's what that felt like for me. And I completely agree with what everyone said. I think formally, it's when it's too formal, it's too rigid. It doesn't really reflect who we are as people and humans and how we can help one another.
Yeah, one more note on this briefly. I just think that one of the things that's been really interesting is as you get more and more senior as a woman, people are always like, can you be my mentor because you're a woman? And it's like, well, awesome. I have 50% of the skills that every other person has. And I want to be like super fair and clear that so many of my mentors, whether they chose to be my mentors or not, or ended up on my personal secret board of advisors, have been amazing men. And I do worry that a lot of women are like, I only want a female woman, mentor because that is the only person who will understand me. And you're forsaking learning from 50% of the people. So my advice would be to people who want and seek mentorship is that don't narrow it and don't come to senior women and say, I want you to be my mentor because you're a woman. Because it's weird. It's like
that. I was just gonna pivot into sort of thinking about the roles of women versus men, because obviously in ad tech, there is a lot of men. And also for the folks, the participants, please, the Q&A is open for questions, which we'll get to in about 15 minutes. But going back to this idea of the men in the workplace and working with women and the leadership positions, how do you see, or have you seen that change as you've gone on in your career? Is it becoming more equitable? Are you seeing more opportunities in the leadership ranks for women? And what are some things that you're doing, both personally and within your organizations, to make sure there is that diversification and representation on both sides?
I think I'd say we're seeing I work in women's-ish media. It's not just formed by women, but we do have a pretty strong, business agenda to address and serve women, put them on stages, publish their content, ensure that the content we're publishing respects all humans. We hope, even when it's just it's entertainment or light content. I think it's hard. It would be hard to argue that there haven't been a lot of advancements in diversity and senior roles. I worry more about sometimes the not that they're the drop off in the mid-level, which got only more pronounced during COVID because so much of domestic care returned to the hands of the head of household female, whether it was education of younger kids or care of elders or care of siblings or friends. Caregiving, 70% of caregiving in the US is owned by women. And that was wild. Like, that set us back. I think it's like 10 years, according to McKinsey and Dress for Success data. So that the not leaning in because you're terrified that your delicate apparatus will get broken, where you've got drop off and you've got pickup and you've got an aging parent and you've got other things that are perhaps taking care of your own health condition or just your own mental wellness. The idea that, like, I can't lean into a bigger job because right now shit's so precarious that I need to keep it, like, just hold my breath. That worries me a lot for the mid-level. The other thing that I really promote, and it's funny because I would get a lot of, it's kind of a comedic topic here because we're very irreverent, but I think it's so important for men to take paternity leave. It's great that our company provides a great paternity leave, not because they're like necessarily recovering from something physically, obviously, but simply because it's a service to women, because it creates very early on a dialectic in which we are not the primary caregiver in all situations. It also allows us to go back to work if we so choose. So it's not just the like, yeah, you're a parent too, and you get the benefit of the company's support, but rather give your wife the opportunity, or if you're in any situation of partnership, ensuring that there's no one individual who, based on gender, is assigned the primary role, whether he they decide that that's the role they want, or it's just sort of a function of societal norms. So that's something I do really approve and support, even though I like to tease some of our guys for taking like long, legit paternity leave, is that it resets the expectation. It's not, I've heard people say like, oh no, we here, but at other companies have a lot of girls who are recently married, and they're going to, I'm saying this with extreme sarcasm and disdain, and they're going to probably want to have kids soon. And that actually is like an unconscious bias that becomes baked into your contemplation of like, I've seen it with fertility treatments, like, oh, they're going to be tired, or God forbid menopause, like that's going to make them batshit crazy. So I think all those unconscious biases that are baked into gender norms and stereotypes are so important for guys to participate in, or, because it's not just from on high, it's like the roles we showcase day to day in our lives that will, I think, really make the change in opportunity for women.
I agree. And I think too, just going back to the idea, a little bit of mentorship, but in terms of, growing up in a more of a male dominated industry, but there's a clear definition difference between mentorship and allyship. And mentorship, coaching, guidance, great. And allyship is about advocating. And I happen to be lucky enough to work for a company at Integral Ad Science, where we have a CRO female CHRO, female CFO, female CEO, and a female majority board of directors. And that's about allyship, right? It's really about advocating and really making sure that we have an incredible culture across diversity and inclusion. And that allyship growing up in the industry was for men too. I mean, without a doubt, like it was not just women. And I could tell you, I wouldn't name the names, but many of them, if they were to be watching, would know who they are. And it's about advocating for someone that is capable and stretching them, but also giving them the resources they need to succeed. And I feel like that men or women on either side, any gender, really, it's really about, we've got to be thinking about being allies and advocating versus just mentoring and coaching. And it's just something that I like to bring up and really clearly define the difference between those two different definitions.
Yeah, I also think with allyship too, like the small acts of allyship really, they're so poignant to me. I mean, I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and there had been a lot of progress around not having all male panels. Fine. But I think you run a risk of then you have, a woman on because you're just trying to sort of do the numbers thing, and that kind of misses the point. But in any event, what happened was my co-founder at the time was asked to speak, and he just took the opportunity and he was like, I think I'm going to take this moment to allow my colleague, me at the time, to step in for me. And I was not prepared on the topic, but it was fine. But the point was, it was just an act of really walking the talk of allyship and in the moment. And it was sort of serendipitous, but I think it did sort of all go, okay, well, this is what this looks like. We also, at my last company, had a women in tech organization. It was a small group of, community that was just getting together to talk about what different aspects of women in technology industry. And we had a few men that were such allies that they showed up. They helped plan agendas, they got speakers. And to me, it was subtle, but it was very meaningful. Just the act of being an ally, being there, doing things, sort of not just paying lip service to it. And I thought that was, I always just go out of my way to call those moments out too, because that's what it looks like in sort of the step change that we're hoping to see. I also think, Hearst is a phenomenally inclusive culture in a lot of ways. And, historically, a lot of our leadership have sort of grown up at Hearst, but there's been a very deliberate over the last few years intention to draw talent from the outside, and that has resulted in a lot of diversity, not just female diversity, but all sorts of diversity in leadership ranks. And I also think that's important too for organizations, is to think sort of broadly about how we recruit talent, not just how we grow them, and how we create that mobility as well. So I just it's been such a wonderful experience being here, because there are so many programs that really do aspire to not just elevate women into leadership roles, but all peoples, with a lot of intention and follow through in investments and programs. And I think for corporations, that's what it looks like. Having programs there, but they're actually seeing the results is what it takes.
The word that comes to my mind when listening to all of you is honesty. And also, like, I don't want to say necessarily radical candor, because I think that can be weaponized a little bit, but the honesty that people can give you about your career advice or where you messed up in a meeting or whatever it may be, and then the willingness to receive that, is sort of the allyship. But also people being willing to be honest on your behalf is the allyship, right? So the CEO of Integral Ad Science was my first boss at Amazon. She is a total badass. Love her very, very much. So I love that I'm on this panel with Sarah. But there was a moment I was working at Yahoo at the time. Yahoo was the biggest website in the world, and Amazon was like, we're going to try ads. I know this is all very hard to believe in retrospect. And I said no to the job a couple times. And Lisa, who is now the CEO of Integral Ad Science, called me and she said, you don't have to work here, but you can't stay there. And I was like, that's weird. Okay, why? And she said, because you're growing and it's not. And it's only a matter of time until those things collide with each other, which was true at that time at Yahoo, which is now having a wonderful resurgence, and Lisa ended up there, which is awesome and fun. But nonetheless, as the CRO, so that was very, very badass. And I remember exactly where I was standing when that conversation happened. I was about to go into a client event in San Jose, and I said, I'll come work there. And she said, wait, I don't think I was offering you the job for the third time. And the reason I wanted that was because I wanted somebody who would be that honest with me to work for. And I learned so much from her, and it was amazing. I'm sure Sarah does too. And Lisa's still very much a part of my life and my circle of board of advisors. I love that. I'm just going to keep stealing it. And then the second part, Jess, you mentioned the put a woman on a panel just for panel's sake. I think it's really important. Representation is very important. Equity is very important. However, there are very few of us that people want on panels when you just do the broad math of I want whatever, C-level, president level women on panels. There was an event in New York about 6 months ago. I was asked to be on the panel. I live in Los Angeles. It was 1 hour and one invitation. And I said, I don't think that makes sense for my schedule. I'd just gotten back from Europe, like wherever it is. And then I suggested that somebody very capable and very senior, who is a man who works also for me, join the panel. This is an external company. I was like, he lives down the street. You should have him. And they said, well, we need a woman. Otherwise, we're not going to have Netflix on the panel. And I think that's not fine. And what I did was fly across the country, land in the morning, go to the panel, and then fly home. And that wasted 2.5 days of my life. That's not helping women. I mean, it was a lovely panel and it was nice people, and then the gentleman, to my point about honesty, was like, that wasn't nice. Like, you put her in a position to either hurt her company or to hurt her life. And that's not fair. And I loved that he spoke up about that. I think in the future we will do that together. But I do think it's something people need to be cognizant of, is just like, inviting you isn't always the most helpful always. However, please invite, but then please respect a reason to give us some of our time back. Otherwise, it's just going to keep setting us back even more. And that honesty is super important.
I think something else on the representation side on panels I've loved, we're one of my favorite parts of our company's work is that we get to put a lot of really, really amazing people on stages through South by Southwest and, Blog Her and various events that we host as Penske Media and as She Media. And I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches, the number of smart people who are willing to speak, often for free, just to advantage others and to share a vision or a mission or a lesson. I think we have to be, this is going to be a weird one. I think we have to be really good on panels. Anyone who is, this is actually, as I'm saying it, really not a great thing, but if you're there for representation, unfortunately, like, I fear that we'll turn into whatever the identity is that's being tokenized, will have less pressure to be really good or to have content that's really compelling because you're checking a box, and that will not train, for us as younger women, doesn't train us into being great speakers because we're there just to check a box. And so maybe we're not as confident or as informed because we're invited 3 days before. This used to happen to me all the time. And it was like, I don't care if you're prepped. I just realized my one woman dropped out. Can you show up? And I started thinking because I pass speaking opportunities all the time to the many brilliant women I work with, is like, I want our best speakers up there just showcasing how dope women are and people of color speaking positions and gender diversity, ethnic diversity, etc. I think it's really critical that we all see how lost we are without these voices on panels in public spaces. But that's like triple pressure right there, because now it's like, potentially a smaller pool of people who are actually like, whose phone number the conferences have, which is sad. And it's like, but if you're really good, maybe we'll move faster in changing the equation on panels.
And this has all been, I mean, I agree with everything that everyone is saying. There's nothing worse than just like, let's throw a woman on a panel just to have a woman on a panel. I was at an event yesterday and they did a wonderful job, but that was very top of mind for how the panels were set up, that they wanted to make sure that they were more diverse. And I did notice it as someone in the audience, but regardless of what my experience was yesterday, as we're coming sort of towards the end, that we do have some questions to get through. I wanted to sort of close up with what the future looks like for ad tech, where women fit in. What are some of the things that Gen, whatever the one before that is, should be thinking about as they navigate their career forward and into the future? Would love to hear what your perspective is as leaders in your various companies. I'll just pick one unless someone wants to jump in. Sarah, you
fast. I can go fast, so I'm done. I think bottom of funnel is everything. We all know this. Thanks a lot, Amazon, for making that clear that like we are going to be living in advertising in the bottom of the funnel. Conversions are everything. Impressions are no longer enough. You guys are doing it too in Netflix, and that's awesome. Thank you all for raising the bar on the power of advertising in the digital age. But so I think operating the bottom of the funnel, ensuring we understand as marketers, as content creators, as executives, how to generate response and outcome if we want to be funded through companies who are trying to sell stuff or trying to serve individuals who want extremely targeted content to their unique needs. So bottom of funnel participation in living, content to commerce, all of that community, I think, to commerce is gonna be really interesting. And sort of that outcome-based mentality, as we see that, the sharper metrics and sharper tech are gonna allow for greater accountability. So yeah, I think that's where, and then finally, I'd love to see some ad tech that figures out the true value of the editorial context. I've never really been able to identify this, and I'm hoping that in defensive journalism, that it matters that you're funding good content. We can just call it like accurate content, sourced content, relevant content. I would like for that to be critical to outcomes. I don't know that it is, unfortunately. You might do just as well advertising in trash content. And then you've got to put the accountability, I think, to defend journalism and quality, put that on the advertiser. But if anyone in ad tech can really prove out that content that's accurate, that has some degree of veracity, that is maybe not hateful, is actually a better deal for an advertiser, I would love to see that. So, and then crossing all of these interesting data sources is going to be fun too. So that's my whole thing.
I think you answered it for all of us. I mean, you got that was fantastic. Thumbs up. It was, I couldn't agree more in terms of just looking at it from a business lens, obviously being at a company where we drive outcomes for our customers. I think the future there with, the shift to video and social and the convergence with CTV, obviously, tons of opportunity with how we're thinking about continuing to drive outcomes for our customers and thinking about AI and ML, which we use today. But when I think about the future of leaders, the future leaders that are coming next, I want them to understand, like, truly own what paying it forward is. I love so much paying it forward. There's so many people in the industry that helped me get me where I am. Friends at home, my incredible, husband who's super supportive. Like, paying it forward, there's something really good that comes with that, and it feels good, when you give back. And so, a lot of business is about give get, and I just want to make sure that those future leaders truly understand, how to define things like allyship and be advocates and give back to those. So, yeah.
Just real quickly on the leadership side, I think is, generationally, there have been so much more diversity in that sort of technical engineering, data science function than when I was sort of coming up in the industry. And I'm just excited to see what that looks like when that sort of level of talent get to the next level of leadership. My hope is that translates into, more diversity across the board, because we've sort of seen and nurtured that growth over the last, 10, 15 years, more so than when I started my career. And so it'll be interesting. I mean, hopefully that works itself out into different leadership styles, more inclusive styles. But I think there is a generational shift that will happen over time, and I'm optimistic for what that translates into in leadership development. Plus everything that Sam said.
Well, we do have a number of questions, which I'll read, and just you please jump in. One that I think is interesting, it's a broad topic, but what do you think is the most significant barrier to female leadership? What have you seen in your day-to-day and over the course of your careers that has been that single barrier?
Get out of your own head. You can do it. I think there's that. I think there's a confidence barrier. I think there's also a gap in number of people that you've seen do it. I remember I was growing up, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, well, my dad's a lawyer, my mom's a teacher, I have a doctor, I have a dentist, and I've seen a fireman. So those things. And then later in my career, it was, what's your biggest aspiration? And I said, I want to be the general manager of a small division of a large company, because that was the senior most woman that I knew. And what I didn't realize at that moment is what I was saying was, I want to have the biggest damn job. Like, that's what I want. And I think a lot of women talk themselves out of that, or they only, and the better we can do about having more women in roles like these ones, the more people can see that as the doctor, teacher, fireman, dentist, etc., because they're seeing it, they know it's possible, they know it exists. we all have imposter syndrome too, by the way. Like, absolutely. I just told you I was scared to go down an elevator, and I'm 46 years old. And it wasn't until people were nice to me at the bottom that it worked for me.
We were scared of you too, dude. We were scared of you too.
Yeah,
Especially
oh,
Chris.
totally.
Chris was terrified.
I
of
hope
things.
you're still scared of me. Let's make
I am right now.
but yeah, I think it's like, it's okay to feel imposter syndrome, and it's also okay to not know stuff. Is just have the confidence you can learn it and go kick ass for yourself and the generation behind you.
And I would throw on that because it's a funny one and everyone's probably heard it, but the thing that you say if you're a woman and you're being snarky is like, if only I had the confidence of a middle-aged mediocre white man. That's the sorry, that's not fair, Chris, but no, I'm just kidding. But I think that you know, faking confidence can sometimes be fun. I have to throw it out because imposter syndrome has been kind of leveled on women, and we are everybody feels it. A lot of dudes feel imposter, like you just feel like I don't deserve this. I'm not as good as I might be advertised as. And I think that we recognize that as women and often say, like, don't worry, I have it too. I just would think, dude, everybody has it. Probably the further away you are from the norm, maybe the more difficult it is to rally yourself in confidence into a room. But to your question about what is the thing that stands in our way, I do think sometimes it's family planning. And that, again, with the data around COVID, I worry that some people think they're choosing between one thing or the other, that they want to nurture those they love, and they want to build a family, not necessarily offspring, but they want to support a partner. They want to, care for a family member, a friend, something, and they're going to have to pick between those things. I have had 2 women at least, but there are 2 that are coming to mind, who have like negotiated heavy, like days before they went on maternity leave, which was genius. Another who came back and was like, I'm ready to be promoted like 10 days after returning. And it was like wonderful to see, because I was like, you're not daunted. You're not worried that you're going to get dinged or lose some power by virtue of spending time outside of the office. So I loved seeing that. I think that gets in your way. I think that, connections, network. I mean, if we just go back to like this, it's weird, but even in our not so long ago history, like the business schools and undergrad many of the most prestigious didn't have more than 10% women in their graduating classes. So we really are still behind on networks. So I think keeping that ecosystem alive is just really important. And I think sometimes we feel like we nailed it because we have amazing advisors, and it's such a gift to have the men and women I have in my life to tell me stuff and keep me honest. But I think we just that's like another century of building, and then even more if you're not a privileged white woman. So cool.
Great. Sarah, do you have anything?
I know we're almost at time, so do you want to ask another question, or do you want to riff on?
Yeah, well, I think I want to keep on going this question because it is, I think it's an important one from the perspectives that you all have.
Yeah, I mean, I think what comes to mind, and it's not answering it directly, but I know there's other questions. We can see some of them coming in about what outside of curiosity has helped you succeed. And it's not easy to get feedback, but you have to ask for it, because unfortunately there are managers and leaders out there who are great, but they might not be giving it to you as much as you might need it or want it. So I would just say, like, your next one-on-one, ask your manager for feedback, and learn from either, the perception or the truth or the data of, how you can continue to grow, not in your current role too. It's not just about your next job, your next job, but that was something that I really, really owned throughout my career was making sure I checked in with my leaders around me, peers, and then checked in with myself based on that feedback, and setting a plan against it, and really just wanting to wake up every morning and, try to do better. So I just think that's some good advice. Like, curiosity is important, but asking for that feedback and doing something with it will take you a long way.
Yeah, I would add to, I mentioned before, sort of jumping across functions. I'll keep this really brief, but one thing I did to try to make that leap was sort of find leadership pockets, or pockets where someone just needed to go and do something. And I would just step in and say, hey, this looks like a way I can build some skills. It looks like it maybe needs some attention, or someone needs to, small project, whatever. But I want to be careful. I'm not saying try to do 2 jobs at once. That's not the point, but find pieces of the job or the skill that you want to grow into, and do it. Ask permission, get the right sponsorship. But for me, it really just helped me get a feel for, do I want to do that? Is it interesting? It was helpful because there was a gap there. You could kind of fill it. You have to create the space to do that. I'm not a fan of multiple jobs, but I think if you're, tactically, especially in our industry where things are changing so much and you want to get exposure, work on a project, find the way. No matter how small, you'll learn from people. And it's just I think it's great to get that sort of hands-on visibility and focus.
This has been so wonderful and really good advice that I know personally I will take. And I'm hoping the same is the case with our audience. Miss Jess Armstrong, if you would like to close up this session.
Yes, and I know we got a lot of questions that we weren't able to answer. I urge everybody attending to follow these women on LinkedIn. I am sure they have future speaking engagements on fabulous panels where they are not a token attendee, where you can hear more from them. And I want to thank Allison for moderating and thank this kick-ass panel of women for all of their unique perspectives and insights, even if we didn't get the whole tequila story. And to everybody who attended, thank you. And I hope we see you on a future Masters of Brand Measurement.